Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? It is Friday, it is 7 p.m., and I'm the Muscle Motivator. So, you know what that means. It means it's time for an episode of No Label Live. And guess what? We are kicking it old school tonight. We are taking it back to the roots. We're actually live for the first time in 2019. So, if you are watching this show for the first time, this show is all about the story of how labels impact our lives. And I believe that no label should ever define you. But I know for a fact that we've all had labels in our past. We all currently wear labels. And it's within our power to create the story we want and use labels that empower us for our future. I'm super excited tonight to have on our guest, who is the author of Fish Out of Water. He's the founder of the Prosperity Loop. And if I say so myself, I think 50 is his lucky number. But I'll let him tell us about that. This entrepreneur is Mr. Calvin Wayman. So I'm going to try and bring Calvin on right now.
There we go.
All
What's up,
right.
brother?
Hey, man. So, how's it out in LA? I know you're in LA right now. So.
Oh, so good. I literally just did a. Have you ever heard of float tanking or sensory deprivation?
Yeah, absolutely.
I just did a 2-hour float. So you got me just right after the post float. It's been done for about 15 minutes, and it feels fucking amazing. So, yeah, things are
Awesome,
going
man.
good. Yeah.
So, I did a little bit of an intro to the audience about who you are, but I want you to tell your story in the way that it empowers you. And my one question that I have to kind of guide is, because I'm all about labels and no label defines me, what are some labels that created the story of your past, and how have they changed over time?
Well, first of all, I love the whole concept of this, and that's why I wanted to come on because I resonate with the exact same thing you're saying, which is you we hold the power to what we're going to create. It doesn't matter what the labels were. But to say who I was and where I come from, I actually, so I'm Calvin Wayman. The first and foremost, I'm a regular dude. You know, like that's thick through and through. I think it'd be really easy to be like, oh, somebody wrote a book. He's an author, entrepreneur, got out of debt, and what like see me speaking on stage. It's easy to put somebody up on a pedestal, but the problem
Yeah.
with that is there's this disconnect. And so I think it's important to know that I'm just like anyone else. But in my background, I actually came from a polygamous family in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I have, holy crap, I just found another reason. I heard you say that 50 is my lucky number. It is in a lot
Yeah.
of ways, now that I think about it. So in my family, like imagine this, 'cause imagine how big my family is. Imagine that you have so many siblings that the number one question people give you is, can you remember all of your siblings' names? You know, that's where I come from. So people think 4 or 5 siblings is a lot. I have 4 or 5 parents. So I actually have 5 parents, 1 dad and 4 moms, and 44 brothers and sisters. So altogether, including myself, that's 50.
Yeah.
Then along the journey, I mean, I had an interesting set of loneliness throughout my upbringing, because I mean, there was a lot of love around. Like there was a lot that was happening, but at the same time, I didn't fit in. I felt like that there was more. My family was very conservative, very much staying the same, and this was the way to do a certain thing. But I felt like I wanted to get out, and so there's a lot of things like there was labels of dreamer or like in kind of a derogatory way.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little talker. You know, I just would say things like I remember my uncles making fun of me for just talking, or you know, just a lot of things that come down to us. But throughout my upbringing, I didn't know how I was going to break through. I didn't know if I was going to stay in that environment or not. And to make a long story short, I ended up going to college. That blew my world wide open. I'm a first generation college kid. Nobody in my family before or since has gone to college. And then to make a long story short, 3.5, 4 years ago, I hit this point where I was like, I know I need to do something more than to do this day job thing,
Mm-hmm.
because it had been eating my soul. And then 3.5 years ago, I quit my day job cold turkey, even though I had a wife and a 1-year-old at the time, and have just been on that journey since, tackling life, tackling the dream, and then which of those tackles have been things that also involve the number 50, interestingly enough. So that's just what I've been doing, taking what I feel called to do, even if I'm scared, even if it goes against my entire past, which it all does, and just deciding to do it anyway.
Do it anyway. I love that. So let's dive in a little bit about your magic number of 50, right? And let's talk about what I think people will be most interested in, the $53,000 in debt.
Yeah.
I mean, so what kind of story does having $53,000 in debt create, and how did you find a way to quote unquote financial freedom?
Well, before the story behind that was like slavery. It was being chained down and not being able to pursue my dreams, and it was like just a lot of pressure, a lot of weight. But what ended up happening is my wife got pregnant, and that's where everything changed, because she said that we're pregnant, and that was a day that I should be like super excited about, right? Like you would
Mm-hmm.
think like you're gonna have a baby, but for me, I was horrified. I was scared out of my mind, and the reason is I knew that I wasn't doing well financially. I didn't know how not well I was doing, but that was the day I dug deep and was like, holy shit, it's way worse than I thought, and I was $53,000 in debt. But that day, I think this is kind of a recurring theme in anybody that achieves more or dreams more. Like we all have these moments, and we can either let it crush us. It can be our obstacle, or it can be our opportunity. And
Yeah.
I said, you know what? I'm going to figure this out. I'm not going to be broke and in debt my entire life. So I became obsessed with everything to do with money and personal finance. And I ended up discovering this pattern, this principle, these of doing finances that just emerged in a way that made sense to my brain by studying all these people that talked about money and then applying it myself, something that I now call the prosperity loop. And long story short, I ended up getting out of debt way sooner than planned. It was supposed to take about 10 years to get out of debt, and it took about 2 years. Or no, 12 years. Excuse me, it was supposed to take 12 years, and it happened in about two. So I got out of debt about 10 years sooner.
Wow.
And and it was just shifting some mindset things that also shifted the way that I behave around money and the way that I manage my money, the way that I do finances and stuff like that. Again, it became from getting sick and tired of where I was and just making the decision that I was not going to be that way. And so I was willing to change to get the result that I want.
Yeah, so that one moment in time led to where you are right now, just like that
Yeah.
flipped the switch for you. So if someone that's watching has some limiting beliefs around money and finances right now, what's one practical thing, piece of advice that you would offer them that they can put into action right now?
It might be two things that I'd say. So it's hard to money for whatever reason are beliefs that are so deep seated because we're seeing them all the time. We get our beliefs reinforced all the time, and we're always using money. We're always reinforcing it, and so it's hard to break something that's always being reinforced in a negative way. So you have to do something that is going to reinforce it the other way or unwind it. So here's something you can do that will help with that.
Okay.
First of all, understand what gets somebody in a negative cycle versus a prosperous cycle. I do not believe that anybody ever becomes wealthy in the long term by a single event. And by the same token, and by the way, we know this because people win the lottery and they don't stay rich. Most of them go broke. And
Yeah.
people that even go to the NFL end up 80% of them are broke within 5 years. And we also know regular people that were just hard workers that became millionaires by doing smart things with their money. So you don't become dramatically rich by a single event, but you also do not stay poor by a single event. It's either compounded growth that stacks on each other, or it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts,
Yeah.
or credit card cuts, however you want to think of it, or swipes, right? So
Yeah.
you'll have to break that cycle. Now, here's something that you can do to start creating space to change the cycle. You need to make the decision to have an emergency fund. Okay, like that is something so basic. We open up an account that is money that is only for an emergency. That would just give you a little bit of headspace that really starts to shift things. Now, what is it that you're going to shift? This is what you're going to shift. Most people, the reason I was in trouble, the reason I was $53,000 in debt, was almost every decision that I made with my money were decisions for the short term. Okay? Decisions for the short term. Like, am I hungry? I'm going to grab some food. Or do I want a coffee? Go grab a coffee. Or rent's due next week. I better do this. Or, like, I wasn't making a decision with my money holistically with all of my money in mind. And that's the biggest difference between people that are super successful with money and most other people. Most other people make decisions for the short term, and people that are really successful make decisions for the long term. And that's being reinforced over and over and over, so it's hard to unwind it. So the first step is to create space for yourself with that emergency fund. And then here's an exercise. It's a wild, wild exercise that you can try, and it's still how I do my finances to this day, that forces you into the prosperity loop if you do it. And it's this. When you get your paycheck, whenever you get your next paycheck, whatever it is, spend it all at once. That's the trick. When you get your paycheck, your job is to cash that money and spend it all at once. Now, what do I mean by spend it? Do I mean go buy an Xbox or something? You know, you're not going to do that. You wouldn't do that very much. You're going to start saying, shit. Okay, so what I'm saying is take all the money you have and make a decision for every single dollar. Like, some needs to go to rent. Some needs to go to food.
Gotcha.
And you're going to get that down to zero. Because here's our problem when we're in the short term and when we're just saving. We're doing things all the time where we're not giving our money something to do, and it's just sitting in our bank account, and that is a disaster. That is a recipe for disaster, because money is meant to have a purpose. But money is also slippery, and when we don't give our money a purpose, it slips through our finger and finds a new owner. And when you make the decision to spend, when you make the decision to spend all of your money at once, then you're going to start asking questions like, okay, I don't get paid for another 2 weeks, so how much should I put towards food? How do I know how much I should put towards all these other things? And when you start asking those questions, when you start saying, how much should I put towards my rent? How much should I put towards my food and all that stuff? Congratulations. You've arrived. You are now in the prosperity loop. You are now thinking longer term. This is still how I do my finances today. In fact, I don't do it every 2 weeks. I do it once a month. I am to the point where I do my finances once a month. In fact, I'm a few days away. I usually do it on the 20th, around the 20th or the 21st. So on Tuesday, I'll be sitting down for my finances. It will take me 30 minutes, and I will be done with my finances for all of February, because I will take all the money that I have in my bank account, and I will decide where it goes. And so I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking holistically with my whole financial picture, not just isolated on one single thing. And that habit is a habit that will compound on itself, because that forces you, since you're thinking holistically, you're making the best possible decision you ever could around your money. And so here's the thing. At first, when you do this, you may not notice very much because it's little teeny things. But you do it, and then you do it the next paycheck. You spend all your money once, and then the next paycheck. Then a few months later, you start realizing, holy cow, I feel like I have more money, even though I don't really think I'm making that much more money.
Mm.
And then this snowball happens. That is why I got out of debt as fast as I did, because it was just these little tiny compounded effects, and then the snowball got bigger, bigger, and bigger, and then it just wiped out the rest of the debt really big. So that's what I would suggest for anyone that feels struggling. Give yourself, that's why I start with the emergency fund, because by starting with the emergency fund, you give yourself a little bit of headspace that if you forgot, because you're spending all your paycheck at once, like literally you're going to give every dollar something to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you mess up because you forgot of a bill, you at least have an emergency fund. I would get like $500 to $1,000 at least in there. So if you need it for an emergency fund, you have it. So
Awesome.
that's what I did, and that's what I suggest.
So, anybody who's watching, and if you're watching on replay, let us know with a thumbs up or a yeah if you're going to give that exercise a try. You're going to spend all your paycheck at once, and you're going to create that emergency fund for yourself. Those are great exercises. And as you were talking, I was thinking that's really like, when I think about it, that's success outside of money as well. Like that whole thinking for the future
Totally.
and creating that compound interest
Yep.
applies to every area of our life.
100%. If you can think and make decisions in your life based on the long term, I think, to me, fear lives in the short term.
Mm,
Fear lives in the short term. Like, but if you can make decisions based on your dream, meaning based on where you want to go, not based on like what you're worried about right now, but based on where you want to go, then yeah, you can't help but win.
awesome. So what's got you excited for 2019?
A lot of things. Uh, I'm ticking off a few bucket list items. I'm going to be going to Tony Robbins here in LA actually in March, so excited for that. I'm going to be going to London and Paris for the first time. But from a place of service, the thing I'm really excited about is I'm actually working on a course right now called Prosperity Loop, the Prosperity Loop course. I did a course like it in all of 2018 called The Six Figure Secret, and it's all transitioning and moving over to Prosperity Loop. And so, yeah, it's a 6-week course that I want to take what I just barely was talking about to you and help more people do it so that they get to where it is that they want to go faster.
That's awesome. I know that's going to serve a lot of people.
Heck yeah.
And so I've got a couple more questions for you. And
Okay.
the first question is, so we all, or I believe we all do, like I said earlier, walk around with labels.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking at it and I was to hand you a name tag that said, "Hello, my label is," and on this label it was a word or phrase that empowers you, what is that word or phrase for you?
I think this is the word. I know what the word. It would be what's on my wrist right now. Unconditional. I'm unconditional. So what that means to me is, you hear of loving unconditionally. I try to live my entire life by being unconditional. What I mean by that is serving without expectation. And like, I'm speaking at this event in San Diego tomorrow morning. I want to be able to show up and give and serve and get a thank you, so to speak, from people because I understood them and I gave them something that's going to help them in their life without any expectation of receiving anything else. So if that was a
Unconditional.
label, yeah, unconditional is that word.
All right. Well, yeah, I hope that tomorrow you're able to create that. You bring that energy. And as somebody who's watched from afar for the past couple of years, because we've never actually met in person, but we've attended.
Where did you first connect with me, by the way?
So,
Remind me.
Summit of Greatness, I've been the last few
Ah,
years. We've never
got
actually
it.
been connected in person.
Did you have you ever been a part of SOGA, Lewis House School of Greatness Academy, or just the event?
Nope, I've not been a part of that.
Just
But
the event.
yeah, so I like the energy that I've seen you bring through the event, and you're somebody who just, to me, like you shine brightly with the energy, and it is an energy of service. So I want to recognize you for that.
Thank you.
Um, where can people connect with you?
Instagram is the best.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I live on Instagram. I'm always in my DMs. So if anybody wants to message me there or anything, to come say what's up and say, hey, I found you on Muscle Motivator or Nathan stuff. Like, yeah, you can find me there. That's where I'll post anything from my podcast. Whenever there's a new episode that drops, yeah, Instagram, Calvin Wayman over there.
Yeah, and your podcast is Curious with
Curious.
Calvin Wayman, right?
Yep.
All right, and we'll link all that up in the comments and everything. Um, so the last question I have for you is, what does no label defines me mean to you?
No label defines me. What that means to me is it doesn't matter what other people put on you or put on me. You know, uh, growing up in the tight religious bubble that I was in and everything, like it was very restrictive, and it would have been easy to like stay down and and live that life, but it didn't feel right. It didn't define me. And so to me, it's the empowering side of it is you get to decide. It doesn't matter what the labels were, or whatever, you can rip it off and you can say, well, this is what I want to define me. I can let unconditional define me, or whatever that word is for you. So nobody else can define you for you. You can define you for yourself.
Awesome. Um, and if you were talking directly to someone it was like a mirror image of you when you were younger.
Yeah.
Like, what what piece of advice do you want to leave that person with who's watching right now?
Join the CIA. And this is what I mean by that. I don't mean go join the Secret Services. I would tell my younger self and anybody watching, every successful person in this world that we all know the name of are members of the CIA. CIA stands for consistent, imperfect action. So
Got it.
get taking action, get in the game, get in the arena. We worry all the times, worrying, thinking that our labels make us think that we're not good enough, or it keeps us on the sidelines too long. And that's probably the most dangerous thing that a label can do, is keep us on the sidelines. And I would say just get in the game and take consistent, imperfect action, because that's where you're going to grow, that's where you're going to make impact, and that's where you're going to fulfill the calling of your soul. So join the member, become a member of the CIA, take consistent, imperfect action, get in the game, and you'll win.
All right, so if you're watching live or you're watching on replay, if you're willing to become a member of the CIA, let us know. Give us a hell yeah. CIA. I'm definitely I believe in that wholeheartedly, that it's about taking the action even if you don't know where that
Yeah,
action is headed.
that's where it has to be.
And to be of service, right? The more we can serve and the more we can support other people, the more we are creating in the world, and we're not letting our labels hold us back. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to be on the show
My
tonight
pleasure.
and this afternoon for you. And so, if you guys like this show, you gained any piece of wisdom from Calvin, which there's lots of wisdom in the show, give it a like, give it a share, make sure as many people see it as possible, and we'll catch you again next week. We're talking the Enneagram next week. So tune in Friday, 7 p.m.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, man.